Hello, my name is Jamie Irvin. I'm the host of the Heavy Duty Parts Report, and today we are doing a live test broadcast on my personal YouTube channel to get ready for the reintroduction of HDPR Live that is going to start tomorrow, where we'll actually be publishing this content on our HDPR, the Heavy Duty Parts Report, YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn channels. Today, this is a test broadcast, so we are just practicing. I've got my whole team here, and what we're going to practice today is what you would hear tomorrow when we are officially live with episode 76 of our Heavy Duty Parts Report live broadcast. Today, we're going to talk about the situation that we saw unfold recently with a fleet in the trucking industry called Yellow. So Yellow went bankrupt, and the reason that they went bankrupt is being squarely put, from the company's perspective anyway, on the shoulders of their union. So we're going to go deep on that subject today. But before that, I'd like to introduce my guest. My guest today is Diana Cudmore. She's the podcast director at the Heavy Duty Parts Report. Welcome to our live broadcast today.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Right. So I'm looking forward to having this conversation with you today, Diana. We're going to be talking about the situation over at Yellow and what's happened there. But before that, let's talk a little bit about some other union news. So we recently heard in the last few days that there has been 25,000 United Auto Workers strike. This is affecting Ford. It's affecting General Motors. It's affecting Stellantis. And these automakers are accusing the UAW, or the United Auto Workers Union president, Sean Fain, of politicizing the strike rather than fighting for workers' rights. Sounds to me like that's probably what the auto worker or the automakers are going to say. They're going to try to find some fault with the union, right?
Absolutely. The workers are asking for a lot. They're asking for a huge pay raise, more benefits to be covered. But we have a heavy duty example to look at of how they actually avoided a strike, right?
Right. That was just in the news that Mac has successfully avoided a strike. When I look at the auto workers union and what they're asking for, I find it interesting. They tied their increase in salary, the exact percentage, I think it was over 40%. Where did that number come from? They tied it to the percentage of increase the CEO got in his salary. So they said, hey, look, if the CEO is going to get over a 40% increase in salary, we should too. Now, over at Mac, what happened at Mac? Why were they able to successfully avoid a strike?
So MAG was able to avoid the strike by talking with the UAW members uh, prior to the strike happening. So we know that the contract that MAC had with its UAW members expired on Friday or Saturday, and by Sunday, they had a deal in place. And this deal really balances the needs of MAC to be able to continue making profit and serving the heavy duty industry, and it balanced the needs of the workers. Max says that it has some of the best benefits in the industry, and it cares for for their members' families. So I think the reason that they were able to avoid this is because Mac had went through its own strike in 2019, where UAW members they went on strike for about 2 weeks, and Mac was really hurting from that. But currently, the Mac president Stephen Roy said that balance of the workers' needs and the company's needs is really important to them.
So it's interesting because the timing of this, it's the same union, right? Representing workers from both automakers and truck makers. And it makes sense to me that they would want to get one deal through. Why? Because then they can point to that and say, look, if you're reasonable, we'll be reasonable. And evidence of that is, look, we just struck a deal with Mac. So automakers, be reasonable, like Mac was, and we can get a deal through. So I wonder how much of that was a strategic move on the union's part. What I'm trying to say is that maybe the union didn't get everything they wanted from Mac, but they needed to show that they could get a deal done, and they wanted to use that to leverage against the automakers. What do you think of that theory? Maybe a
I
little bit
think
of a conspiracy theory, but I don't know. It seems reasonable to me.
I think that seems perfectly reasonable. Another thing to know about MAC is that about 3,500 MAC employees are part of this union and participated in the previous strike back in 2019. So while it's not as significant as that 25,000 person strike that's going on right now in the auto world, that's still a significant amount of employees that could really hurt MAC if they were to strike. So that makes perfect sense to me, Jamie. I think that that's a conspiracy theory that I'm happy to sign on to.
Well, and not to take anything away from the leadership at Mac. Obviously, there are, they came to the table with a package that the workers could accept, and they obviously showed that they were willing to find some middle ground. I think it's also important for us to recognize that there's a big difference in scale with automakers and truck makers. There are millions of cars produced every year, but there's only about 250,000 heavy duty trucks, Class 8 trucks produced in North America every year. So there's a big, big difference in scope and scale. And that's obviously seen in the numbers of employees as well. So it is possible, too, that there is just more resources with the automakers up for grabs. And so the union's digging in hard to make sure they get what they consider their fair share. Whereas the union recognized that the scope and scale of the truck manufacturing side of the business is just much, much smaller. And therefore, maybe they didn't ask for as much. And, it's hard to know. I mean, we'll never know the true story because we weren't in those negotiating events in those rooms, but we can speculate a little bit and see what's going on. Okay, so let's talk about another union strike that has actually brought a company into bankruptcy, or at least that's what's being alleged by the leadership. So if you look at Yellow, it's a fleet in the commercial trucking industry, and they're blaming their Teamsters union for their bankruptcy. So they filed Chapter 11 on July 30th, putting 30,000 workers out of a job. And they're blaming the Teamsters for putting the brakes on, and I quote, our business plan, literally driving our company out of business, according to Yellow CEO Darren Hawkins. What do you think about that, Diana?
Well, the Teamsters really fired back about this. Teamsters general president responded that he called the Yellow's leadership dysfunctional and a greedy C-suite that failed to take responsibility for squandering all that cash. Now, the cash that they're referring to is about $700 million in PPP loans. That was pandemic loans that were given out during the pandemic to help businesses stay afloat. And unfortunately, Yellow was not able to pay that $700 million back to the government. And in this bankruptcy settlement, unfortunately, it looks like the taxpayers that funded that PPP loan are not going to be paid back. And the Teamsters are really just putting the blame on the leadership at Yellow, basically saying that they made a mistake. And unfortunately, there are thousands of workers now that are looking for a job. It's a real shame that this happened.
Yeah, and I was looking at a couple of videos about businesses in the trucking industry that had gone out of business over the last couple months, and there's something like, I can't remember the exact number, something like 20,000 over the last couple months, and this has had a real impact on the capacity of because as we know, tonnage is down, demand is down for freight, and so there was just too many companies trying to serve the trucking industry. And so with the elimination of a lot, and most of these 20,000, they're very small operations, right? But then you have a big one like Yellow goes down. What does that do for capacity, demand, and how does that benefit or how does that hurt the trucking industry?
Well, with a lower supply of transportation companies available, that may increase the capacity available for the existing companies. I know from personal experience, my daughter's dad is a truck driver, and they were seeing lower capacity, but after that Yellow news came out, the capacity just exploded, and all of the current employees are being worked to the bone, honestly, because there is a lot of capacity. Now, of course, that's anecdotal evidence. I'm in Indianapolis. That may not be true everywhere, but it could have a good effect on the industry. It's just sad that 100-year-old company had to go down in order for that to happen.
Yeah, and the data that I was looking at with those 20,000 roughly companies going out of business, it seems to have really positively impacted the Midwest, at least. The Midwest has seen the companies who are remaining, their demand for their services has gone way up, and they had capacity because things were going in the wrong direction for a while there. So it's interesting, on the one hand, you have obviously those 30,000 workers, they're now looking for jobs. On the other hand, if a lot of that capacity shifts over to the companies who are left behind, then they start hiring. So hopefully, most of those workers will find their way into jobs very quickly and won't suffer too much. But it does show you that there's a real challenge right now in society in general between the powers that be, people in leadership positions, whether it's corporately or whether it's politically, and the working class people. I think of that song that just came out a couple months ago. What is it, North of Richmond?
Yeah,
Or like this
Richmond
guy,
desperate.
Oliver Anthony is his stage name, but yeah, Rich Man North of Richmond. And why did that song explode, right? Well, it really represents the sentiment and feelings of what was formerly called the silent majority, the working class people. And there's a lot of frustration right now. So I'm not surprised by the actions that are being taken by unions right now. They know that with rising inflation and costs, their workers are struggling and have taken huge pay cuts because of the invisible tax of inflation. So, on the one hand, I see their perspective. As a business owner, I do sympathize sometimes with the leadership of companies because I know how hard it is to balance the needs of the company and of your workers. And if you're a good human being and you're trying hard to balance that, then it's a complex problem to solve. That being said, there is people out there that are just more than happy to fleece a company and take whatever they can get. And I'm not laying that at the feet of any individual people, but in my working experience, I've seen good leadership and I've seen leadership that was lacking, and it has a major impact on the workers. That's for sure.
Absolutely. And if I may, Jamie, this yellow implosion essentially seems to have started when Yellow was unable to make a benefits plan payment for its workers. Now, of course, that was because they were financially struggling. But it seems like the Teamsters got really upset and worked up, rightfully so, because Yellow decided to take away funds, or not take away funds, but keep funds from going into their workers when the Teamsters feel like that money could have come out of something else, like, CEO and leadership benefits packages instead of the actual workers, that really are the back of these, the transportation industry. And so obviously that led to a lot of hard feelings. And unfortunately, it seems like that one decision by leadership seems like has triggered this whole domino effect of now Yellow going under. So,
Yeah,
yeah, that's a real shame.
that's a tough one because, like, for example, let's say that they said, okay, well, we're going to cut our benefits, just the leaderships. That might only be a handful of people, right? So even if they had done that, would it have created enough cash to cover 30,000 employees' benefits? Probably not.
Probably not.
So but I think this illustrates the point of the importance of managing companies and making sure that you are building up your cash flow, that you're protecting your workers, that you're protecting the company from the future. It's so easy when times are good to think they're never going to end. And it's so easy when times are bad to think they're never going to end, right? You have to have this like really balanced, even keel approach to business through the highs and lows. And unfortunately, obviously Yellow's been around for over 100 years. So past leadership successfully negotiated the highs and lows. In the last 100 years, we had a world war, we had pandemics, we had, other conflicts, we had market collapses. the previous leadership of Yellow over 100 years successfully navigated all of that, and this particular leadership group were unable to navigate COVID and the aftermath of COVID. So it shows you, if a company that's been around for 100 years can go down, anybody can. And I think that for leadership out there, this is a time to take notice. Like this should put
Absolutely.
you on notice that you need to be really, really looking at what you're doing very carefully.
And there's one more thing that I wanted to bring up. Yes, it's super important to manage your cash flow and to be looking ahead. But leadership also needs to make sure that they have a good relationship with employees. In this case, it was the union representing the employees and perhaps emboldening the employees to speak up and ask for what they felt they deserved, which was for their benefits plan to be funded. But it seems like the relationship between the union and the leadership was broken at that point. Mm-hmm. So managing the relationship, especially when you have a union in the mix, is so important to earning longevity as a company.
Yeah, and unions are smart. They don't wait necessarily. They often take action at times that are the least convenient for the leadership and the company, and they do that on purpose because that's when they have the most leverage. Exactly. So that's the way it goes. All right. This is a test live broadcast. So we're just going to break from our format for a second so I can talk to my producer. Taryn, at this point, do you have a commercial ready to go to run? No? Okay. Okay, great. All right. So back into what we would call our test broadcast. We want to start talking about questions that people have about the trucking industry. We are going to make that a regular part of this live broadcast on the Heavy Duty Parts Report. So Diana, what is the question we're going to consider today?
So it's not so much a question as it is a general feeling. And this feeling comes from...
Nope, stop. It is a question. What is it like to be an owner-operator? Look at Struggling Trucker 1.
Okay, I apologize because that is...
Reverse back up. So Diana, what's the question that we're going to consider today?
Okay, in question format is, what is it like to be an owner-operator? And this question is going to be answered by a TikTok posted by Struggling Trucker 1. Let's roll the clip.
So you think you want to be an owner-operator? Well, you better like doing this on Friday evening, because this is what you're going to be doing if you want to be an owner-operator. Don't believe all that bullshit about, oh, you're making all this money, just take it to the shop. Ain't happening. Till next time, keep struggling.
All right. So, Struggling Trucker 1 says it like it really is. Now, let me give you perspective as someone who sold a lot of parts to owner-operators and small fleets over the years. I can attest that many Friday evenings on my way home from a long week of work, I got a phone call. My compressor's down. I blew a line, hydraulic line. I got a brake issue. My drive shaft was, damaged. Why are they working on it Friday night? Because they got to get the parts. They got to figure out what parts they need. They have to order those parts. Hopefully Saturday, when the parts store is open, half of Saturday, they can come and pick up the parts. They can fix it on Saturday. They can go to church on Sunday morning and have supper with their family. Saturday night, go to church Sunday morning, and then get back in the truck and leave Sunday evening for another week's worth of work. That whole story was repeated over and over and over again over 25 years. So I resonate with this video because it's like, yep, that's real. That is what it's like to be an owner-operator.
Absolutely. I mean, it's not a 5-day week job. It's a 24/7 kind of a job. And isn't it funny that workers go on strike and trucks break down at the worst possible time?
Yeah. Never, ever is it going to happen when it's convenient, when you're flush with cash and you've got lots of time. He said something at the end of it that of the video that's really interesting. He said that, you can't just take your truck to a shop and get it fixed. Like, wouldn't it be nice if, my truck needs to be fixed, I'm an owner operator, I'm just going to drop it off at the repair shop or the dealership. they'll fix it this weekend and I'll be back. That's not reality. Those shops are booked out sometimes weeks in advance. Plus, it's not necessarily that you can afford to be able to pay someone at $125, $150 an hour to diagnose and repair the issue, right? So if you're an owner operator, you got to be, you're independent, and therefore you have to be independent. Danny Kuntz, he commented, Friday, get home late, start fixing, and break another part while fixing the first part. Saturday, get the parts. Sunday, finish fixing before you finally head out again. Danny, you're absolutely right. That's exactly what I saw owner operators go through. What did Life of JJR say, Diana?
Life of JJR said, that's why I drive old trucks. They're more reliable and they're cheaper to fix. Now that is smart.
That's right. That's right. That's part of being an owner operator, and I enjoy every minute of it. Is someone called Handle Yellow. So this is kind of pointing to something that I remember having a conversation with my boss's boss. So I was a sales account manager. I had a regional sales manager, and then his boss was the vice president. And the question was, why did you approve the third warranty on that transmission? And I've told this story in parts before. The reason why is because we had a customer. They were independent. They were owner operators. They owned a couple trucks, but they were independent. It was a young family. There was a transmission issue. It went once, it went twice. On the third time, like, we could not conclusively understand why this transmission was failing in this application. And because we couldn't conclusively show, like, it wasn't that the driver was shock loading it, it wasn't a driver abuse, it wasn't incorrect installation, and we just couldn't get to the bottom of what the failure was actually being caused by. And so, yeah, of course, I took care of my customer. That's what good salespeople do. The thing that is important to remember is he said thank you, but his wife phoned me, and his wife was almost in tears, and she said something along the lines of, like, we literally wouldn't have been able to feed our children this weekend if you hadn't taken care of that for us. And that guy went on to build a relatively successful small fleet. He had several drivers. I think he got up to 8 or 9 trucks, 8 or 9 drivers, and he bought tens of thousands of parts for me over a couple year period after that. Mm-hmm. So, with owner operators, they're a specific kind of person. They're a driver, but they take the responsibility of owning the equipment and all of what that entails, which includes the costs associated. And they're not rolling around making millions of dollars. Like, they're spending almost as much as they make, sometimes more. And they do it for various reasons. They want to take care of their family. They want to be independent. They want to have more freedom. They want to be able to choose when they work and when they don't. And it doesn't appeal for everybody, right? There's 4 million truck drivers in the United States, and only 350,000 of them, according to the Owner Operators Association's website. There's only 350,000 owner operators in the States out of 4 million drivers. So it's a special breed of person.
Absolutely. Yeah. Jamie, something's going on with your mic. I'll tell a personal story while you might address that. So again, my daughter's dad is a truck driver, and he's always been a company driver, but he started driving when my daughter was 10 months old. And if you're a truck driver, you know that if you want to get your start, you go to a company like CR England or Swift or something like that. You get their free driver training to get your CDL, and then you owe your life to them for about a year. And that's not to, bash on these companies, but it's not easy, especially when you're coming from a job that's something like, 8-hour days, 5 days a week. Sometimes the newest drivers will be sent out for 3 weeks, 4 weeks. And I believe the longest time that my daughter's dad was out was 8 weeks straight. And of course, I was a stay-at-home mom. I had a young baby. It was not easy. And there were many times during his career that we considered for him to become an owner operator, but for us, it was just too risky of a choice. Again, those numbers that you could get paid 60, 70, 80 cents a mile, sometimes $1.50 a mile, were really, really, they looked really good, but we knew the amount of time, effort, and just cash would go into keeping a truck running. That wasn't the right fit for our family. And honestly, I'm glad that we didn't go down that road and fail if we were going to find that out. But no matter what kind of truck driver you are, whether you're OTR, owner operator, local, regional, overnight, line haul, whatever you do, thank you. The United States and North America owes everything that we enjoy to you. And we here at the Heavy Duty Parts Report really deeply recognize that this is a sacrifice. Yeah. Oops. Sorry, technical difficulty. Can you say that again, Jamie? I'm not hearing anything, but maybe Taryn is.
No, unfortunately, Jamie, you muted yourself and I can't unmute you. You have to do it yourself.
It's not automatic because I changed the settings.
There we go. That's better. Now we can hear you, Jamie.
Okay. So yeah, we're going to have to figure out if this is a microphone issue or if this is a cable issue or if this is maybe
a me issue.
A stream. No, it might be the software you're using for live streaming, a StreamYard issue, but
that's very possible. But we'll get through it. And
the problem with going live is that you have to deal with this stuff on the fly. Well, this has been a good conversation today. Thank you, Diana, for being our guest. I really appreciate it. And you've been listening to the Heavy Duty Parts Report, a live broadcast on the Heavy Duty Parts Report. I'm your host, Jamie Irvin. Don't forget to follow the show by going over to heavydutypartsreport.com. And we have a new episode coming out every Monday. Monday's episode, Daryl Grady from SSR Lighting is going to be talking about a safe light setup that is used inside of trailers. And this is something that really is the first company that's figured out how to properly light a trailer with some specific functionality that I think is very interesting. I hope you enjoy the episode. So head over to heavydutypartsreport.com, follow the show for free, or get it wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much for watching this live broadcast. We'll talk to you soon.